Hi, I'm Ylli with the Memos to the President podcast. Last week, I traveled to India to participate at the US-India Forum organized by the Ananta Centre. While I was in Delhi, I was also privileged to sit down with the Indian External Affairs Minister, S. Jaishankar. We discussed a lot of topics, but primarily we focused on the profound changes that are happening in the international order today.
The texture and the quality and the complexity of data is going to be a very important aspect of how AI is going to grow, which will make us, in a way, crucial to the global workplace, very important for world technology advancement.
So we discussed US-India relationship, India's foreign policy objectives, India's relationship with China, Russia, and the Global South. I conducted the interview before the deadly attack in Kashmir. S. Jaishankar is the architect of the India's foreign policy today, and he has a clear-eyed view about what's going on in the world today. I recommend you listen to this podcast and enjoy the conversation. Hi, welcome to Memos to the President. I'm Ylli with the Special Competitive Studies Project. It's an honor and privilege to have the Indian External Affairs Minister, S. Jaishankar, as a host of my podcast today. Minister Jaishankar, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
It's an honor to have you here. Sure. Last time I watched you speak live in front of the audience was in February at the Munich Security Conference.
Right.
And this was right after your meeting in the Oval with Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. You flew directly to Germany, and you said something that really stuck with me since then. You said that the world is going through profound, significant change.
Right.
Can you elaborate? What did you mean by that?
Well, it's true. I mean, there was a context. I was coming out of Washington. But I've always held that what we are seeing unfolding is not just a different politics. It's not just a different administration or, something which is going to go away. It is both an outcome as well as a shaper of very deep developments which have been happening in the world. Some of it is obviously reflective of the impact of globalization, a feeling that certainly in America, that the last 30 years have not served America well. And in many ways, the disenchantment on this score is not limited to America. I mean, you had a different kind of articulation of that when it came to UK and Brexit. And I would say even in the developing world, there is a lot of anxiety about how, small businesses are getting impacted by unfair competition. So there is, I think, first of all, a great unease, to put it very mildly, about the state of the world and the direction in which it's going. Secondly, I think what is also changing in many ways is actually the impact of technology. It's one thing, when we speak about globalization, it was made for a manufactured goods era or agricultural trade era. To some degree, a certain amount of services and the mobility which came with services. But as we move into a digital era and even more into an AI era, it's a totally different ball game. So you can see the technology side unfolding, the economic side unfolding, the competition among nations, the balances between them changing. And I think all of this has really created a perfect storm. And I don't think the storm is a passing storm. I think when one day we will look back on this era, to call it an inflection point, I think would be an understatement.
And you have talked about this for a while now, but let's just continue on the artificial intelligence piece here. How do you think India is positioning itself in the AI era? I think two core advantages that India has are people and data.
I would add one more. People, yes. People meaning talent in a way. Data, yes. But also diversity of data. That if you look today at India, and finally the texture and the quality and the complexity of data is going to be a very important aspect of how AI is going to grow. And there would be very few other societies where you would get that diversity in a way. But why, one part of it, of course, is what we are doing, how we are proceeding to go about it, the different dimensions of it. There is in a way a kind of a national AI mission. It's not, look, at the end of the day, when we speak about AI, what are we talking about? We are talking about people people, data, the LLMs that come, energy, and the hardware, the engineering or the. Now, we have to address every aspect of it. And that's really what we are trying to do. Every country will do it in a way in which it is best suited. So it doesn't mean I have to replicate what other countries are doing. On this one, certainly, right. We'll have to devise our own pathway. But why, from my perspective, this is, I think, very consequential, is if you look, we speak of a world order. Broadly, the world order came out of the Second World War. It was a consequence of the outcomes, who won, who lost, of the manufacturing and economic strength. The US and the USSR emerged as the most powerful country. To some extent, it was a post, the colonial advantages were there, which is why UK and France could continue in the big league beyond actually the outcomes of 45, which depleted them. And then it was strengthened by the nuclear order. The nuclear order was in many ways a kind of a consolidation of the world order, reflected in the UN Security Council as well. I think today we are seeing a very different, I would say, ingredients of a new order emerging. And it would be much more an order based on tech capabilities, certainly on AI, because AI is profoundly transformational, and unlike any other technology changes in the past, if you look at human history, mostly technology changes apply to a particular domain, So you change metallurgy, okay, you had nuclear fission, you learned to, arm warships, navigate armories in a way. But each one was one vector changing. This time, everything is going to change. Everything is going to change. It's going to be very sweeping. It will not just define the future. It will even redefine the past. Our understanding of the past will also change along with it. So it's very hard to really overstate what awaits us. We tend on a day-to-day basis look at administrations, look at their pronouncement, look at the policies. I have no quarrel with it. That's the way our business is done. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't really miss the woods for the trees. I think there's a much bigger transformation, I would say almost a revolution that is unfolding. And it is that revolution which will actually define the new world order. We shouldn't think in 20th century terms and say, instead of 5 countries, there'll be another 5 or 6 countries. That's not the way it's going to work.
Going back to discussing the US-India relationship, I worked in the Pentagon when Leon Panetta launched the famous Defense Technology and Trade Initiative. You became the minister in 2019. This relationship has just deepened and continued to scale and scope, unimaginable before. You were at the Oval in February. You have now a clear pathway in terms of the next 3 years during this administration where the relationship should go. I think there are 3 pillars that I think the conversations are happening: the defense pillar, the trade pillar, and the technology pillar we just discussed.
And the energy pillar, but you can fit it into trade and technology as well. Sure.
What do you see as potential next level relationship that can change, the dynamics between the United States and India?
Well, look, we are already, the landscape that I kind of explained to you is actually a revolutionary landscape. Every factor in the landscape is changing or poised for a big change. The US is clearly changing. And again, when the world's biggest power, world's biggest economy reassesses how it will approach the world, it has deep consequences. Where India is concerned, again, there's been a steady rise, you could say, quantitatively, qualitatively, by well before the end of this decade, we will actually be the third largest economy. And we will have strengths which will make us, in a way, crucial to the global workplace, very important for world technology advancement, a very significant reservoir of global talent and innovation. So when it comes to India, US, again, there is the evolutionary path. We should continue. That's a foundation. That's how you grow. At the same time, there are possibilities for quantum jumps, because something else opens up. I think it's important we keep assessing and reassessing the relationship, keep looking for opportunities, but most important, find ways of making it work for both of us. This relationship will grow when, obviously, it will benefit both parties. So, as an example, you mentioned defense. We have in the last few years stepped up Make in India. We would like to build up our own defense industry, but we are willing to partner other countries and other companies and other technology sources out there. We are looking at energy. Now, when it comes to fossil fuel sources, we would like to diversify. There is safety in diversification. When it comes to nuclear, again, for a variety of reasons, the nuclear deal of 2005 did not deliver on its promise. I think we have an opportunity today to rectify that. But most important, our relationship, I believe, in the relative weightages, I think it will become more and more a technology-centered relationship, which means we must pay a great deal of attention to mobility, to the comfort of talent. Sometimes people will move, sometimes businesses will move, sometimes research will move. We are seeing all of this happening. So we have more global capability centers in India today. They're growing at an amazing speed. At the same time, we are the largest number of students in the United States. And clearly, you can see in tech sector particularly, the Indian presence is very noticeable. So I think it's a relationship which should not coast along on an autopilot and say, we've done this and we'll keep growing that. I would say we need to assess, reassess, relook, explore, reinvent, and I'm pretty sure we can do that.
Talking about reassessing and reevaluating, you're in the middle of the United States of a bilateral trade negotiation. Mm-hmm. We have tariffs on top of that have been paused for 90 days. The Vice President just landed today. Where do you think the bilateral trade negotiations is headed to?
We are. I can only speak obviously for our own country here. We have long debated, and this is well before January 20th this year, or I would say even before November of last year. We have long debated the merits of a trade agreement with the United States. There are two reasons for it. One is the economic, or three reasons actually. One is the economic logic. The US is still the most significant market in the world. It, for us, has the greatest potential for growth. So when I look at my exports and say I want to become a bigger trading country, I'm looking majorly at the United States. So there is a trade, there's an export case in itself. Secondly, for some peculiar reasons, when we did our first set of FTAs, in the 20 years after our liberalization in 91, 92, most of them happened to be with Southeast Asian or East Asian economies, ASEAN, Japan, Korea, and the supply chains, which have fed into the regional economy. Now, these are in many ways competitive economies. These are not necessarily the markets, these are not necessarily the partners and the economies where there is potential for more growth for India. And they also in a way skew both our economy and our strategic positioning. We get pulled a bit too much in the direction of countries who are actually our competitors. So I think there's a strategic case for a trade agreement, not just with the US, but with the UK, with EU as well. Sure, I mean, any trade agreement is complex. There'll be areas of sensitivities on both sides. So, there'll be a lot of negotiating on the fine print, and that is all to be expected. But I think there is an export case. I think there is in a way, a strategic case. And third, I come back to this. I think there's a technology case that we are no longer in an era of manufactured goods where it doesn't matter what you buy from whom. All products at the end of the day are same except for the cost. I think today, because almost anything you buy or do has data embedded in it, its provenance is very important. Who made it, with whose data, what is the level of trust. So if you see how often today the word trusted enters our vocabulary, I see the change in conversations among ministers, among leaders, among policymakers, trusted vendors, trusted sources, trusted geographies. This is a different era. And here again, because the US is a market economy, because the US is a democratic society, because the US is pluralistic, it has certain safeguards and practices with which we are comfortable because we have the same. I think the case for building a technology relationship with the US and broadly with Western countries is very strong. And to my mind, all of this will actually drive us to where we are. So we are actually quite, I would say, we are quite open and active in terms of this, exploring this opportunity. For me, this is not how do you respond to tariffs. It is actually a set of opportunities which could refashion a very crucial relationship. Whatever the logic on the American side, I will look at it from my perspective.
Talking about the Indian perspective, after COVID, and with the leadership of G20, India emerged in sort of like a new role. I think you published a book last year. So I wanted to really get your thoughts about how do you see India's role in the world today?
Through multiple lenses, you can say. At one level, as you become a bigger economy, certainly a more populous society. Remember, we are now the largest, most numerical in the world. Clearly, more capability, more influence, more responsibility. So that's one aspect of it. The second, there will be a kind of a new architecture. The new architecture is not going to be as encompassing as the previous one. It will be more fragmented. There will be more balances, which will create an aggregate for a global balance, if you could call it that. And so it will be important to be invested or to be interested at least in the multiple balances which are going to come about. It will also be a world much more regional. Many countries are going to say, that's not my problem. You figure it out for yourself. Already you can see that many crises which would have provoked a global response earlier are either neglected or left to the regional powers to do whatever they want to with it. And I would also say that we have to both bring our strengths, and the strengths include our history, our culture, our civilization. At the end of the day, of the great civilizations, if one looks at major or potentially major powers today in the world, there are really two who could claim to be rightful inheritors of an old civilization. And that you have a certain sort of a mindset which comes in it. You are far more patient, you are more deliberative in the manner in which you approach things. But with all this in mind, also recent history, that we are a post-colonial society. There is a natural solidarity and bonding with others who have. They feel in many ways that there is a certain belief in India. There is a certain relevance of India. That the same thing can happen in, let us say, the US, Europe, Russia, or China. The global South doesn't believe that that's a transposable experience for them. But when it happens in India, they do. So when we look at something like, say, digital public infrastructure, till a few years ago, the global South really thought this was not for them, that this was something beyond their reach. Today, when they see, how deep and efficient and effective the digital public infrastructure is in this country, that it's really transformed our governance. It has transformed our lifestyle in many ways. The fact that we don't carry wallets anymore, we make our cashless payments, that pretty much any government service is available online. What would take us months now take minutes to do. Now the global South looks at all of that and says, okay, that's something, okay, India is doing, maybe I can work with them, and it's something I can also absorb and I can learn. So in many ways, I think we serve as a motivator, we serve as a partner. I think again, COVID was a moment of great, it was a crisis in many ways of belief also. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure in the US, for example, whether there is an appreciation of how badly the global South felt it was treated. Badly in terms of vaccines, badly in terms of travel, badly in terms of resources. And at that time, they saw, okay, here's a country like India stepping up, even though it's having its own challenges. So there are different dimensions, but look, when we talk today about a world, I can't use a single metric to define my relationships. If I were to look at the entirety of my interests, I would have strategic partners in a way. I would have a certain set of countries who would be military defense partners. A certain set of countries would be energy partners. There would be overlaps in the Venn diagram, but there would also be some divergences.
Can I ask you about this question? Because for some critics, this multi-alignment really is a risk, because on one end, India is a member of BRIC, and then on the other hand, India is a member of Quad. Mm-hmm. So how do you manage this relationship?
Well, I'm not sure I would call it a risk. I would call it certainly a kind of a challenge to our dexterity. But the reason is because we have different, our agenda is not simple and necessarily and tied to another country. I mean, we are a very big country. I mean, frankly, we are the biggest country, as I said, population-wise. So, I think the diversity and the complexity of my interests actually sort of make you take multiple initiatives. So, I mean, if you think of these groupings as a kind of a club, so if your interests are very big or very complex, it suits you to be a member of different clubs. I mean, that's real life to people as well. You know, not everybody goes to the same club every day.
Right. Let's talk another important relationship that India has, and that is with China. Since 2020, this relationship has become really challenging after the cross-border incidents. Since October, I think you have said that the relationship is on a positive trajectory. How do you assess your relationship with China now, and where do you think that's going to go?
You know, I am not obviously impervious to its enormous challenges, which starts but is not limited to the boundary issue. There are a whole lot of other issues, including the natural competition among nations. You know, what makes it, I think, particularly sort of intricate is the fact that both countries are rising. So it's a double dynamic, if you would, and that we are also proximate. So if we were not proximate, or if one was rising and the other was not, it would be a different kind of situation. But that's not the case. So this is as complex as it can be. You know, the two largest, most populous countries in the world, the two who probably would be the second and third largest economies, the two who are old civilizations, who will have to find some equilibrium. I mean, equilibriums may need revisiting from time to time, but they still are a factor of stability. I think that's in many ways the challenge of the relationship. Now, unfortunately, in the last 5 years, you know, we are still perplexed by why that whatever equilibrium was established between 1988 and 2000 was disturbed by them. We've always maintained that this is not in our interest, not in their interest. I believe today that there is a realization that better relations serve both of us well. So we are taking steps to see if we can move in that direction. So on the one hand, would I like to see more stable, better relations? Of course I would. On the other hand, does that mean that problems have gone away or I'm in denial of it? Obviously not. So I'm very realistic about, you know, what are the issues in the relationship, but I'm also, it is part of our diplomatic strategy that so long as our national interests are protected and well served, that I would try to ensure that I can get you know, a certain stability and a certain equilibrium which would serve my interests well.
You talked about three mutuals: respect,
Sure.
sensitivity, and interest.
Yes.
In the relationship with China.
Yes, because it, you know, again, it has to work for both of us. It cannot be one-sided, you know, and I think that message has come through strongly in the last 5 years.
Another relationship that is always interesting and important for everyone is your relationship with Russia. Mm-hmm. And in the last 3 years since the Russia invasion of Ukraine, you have served as a facilitator of communication, for the lack of a better word. Where do you see the situation now? We have negotiations to stop the hostilities. How do you predict that's going to go? And what is India's position in all of this?
I don't predict, number one. Number two, we've always believed that it's important for the two parties to directly contact each other, which was not the case earlier. also believe that the issues are quite complex. I mean, there's a lot of history there. This didn't happen out of the blue. So in any situation like this, it's not as simple as sometimes people may wish it was. But there's a fourth factor, which is, look, the conflict has gone on for 3 years now, and the longer, I mean, if you look at modern history, the longer a conflict goes on, the harder it becomes to settle, because there is the costs of the conflict become a factor in calculation as well. So, but here we do believe we speak for, frankly, the global South in entirety. The global South is very disturbed by this conflict. It feels this conflict has had a ripple impact on the international economy. And the global South, because it's the most vulnerable part of the international economy, has paid a price out there.
Last question, sir. If you look for the next 3 years, you mentioned we have technology that's going to impact the world order, primarily the AI. You have the situation in the Middle East, you have the situation around Taiwan, you have the Ukraine now. You are in a position with your thinking and writing and your work really to predict where the world is going to go. So what do you think are some of the things that we need to change in terms of the institutions? You talk about how this is a completely new era. So what are the next 3 years, like expectations from your point of view about the world and about the security?
Some parts of it are more visible. Some parts of it are less so. It's very clear that the world trading system is going to undergo a fundamental shift. And in a way, we have to ask ourselves how well it served us. If it ended up really with over-concentration of manufacturing in a particular geography and all the political and strategic consequences of that, I think there is reason to pause and reflect on the old system. So it's important not to be in nostalgia that, everything was working fine and, why are we suddenly getting disturbed? I mean, I think there were serious problems which had just been pushed under the cover and, you can say the can was getting kicked down the road. So some of them have now come up and in a way in which they have to be addressed. To some extent, the rebalancing, which is, if you look at the relative weightage of powers in the world, that has also changed. It has, there would be a number of, for example, Asian countries who would assert a degree of say and influence, which they may not have had 10, 20, 30 years earlier. It can happen as a nation. It can happen even as a group. One of the reasons why BRICS is attractive to many countries is it's a platform. It's a platform to articulate views which they believe were ignored by the countries who were dominating the earlier order. At the same time, you have an example like the Quad, where countries have come to work together, putting aside this orthodoxy that only allies can actually work together, which is really an extrapolation, I mean a very mechanical extrapolation of a certain period of world history and a certain geography. Those, the political architecture will change, the economic architecture would change. To me, the one big question for which we will see the answer is actually the technology factor. And because I put that really as the most important of the three, I would say quite honestly, it's a big unanswered question at the end of the day. Where will the world be even 3 years from now? 3 years from now, we could be looking actually at a very different technology situation, and with all the ramifications of that.
Mr. Jaishankar, thank you so much for hosting us here.
Thank you. Great
Thank
pleasure.
you so much.